morning. I'm sorry, I have a really bad headache, so I would appreciate y'all bearing with me on this. I asked if I could have a little bit of time this morning to give God some glory about some stuff. And I have been waiting for the right opportunity to do this, and I don't know that there is a right opportunity. You know, I think about right now, I'm going to stand here and I'm going to give glory and honor to my God for the great things that he is doing in our lives while other people are suffering in our church. And I don't want y'all to think that I take this lightly at all. Our God is still great, he's still good, and he's still in charge. Having said that, I also don't want to get up here and spout out a bunch of empty words. It's very serious when you approach this pulpit. This is where the word of God is preached. So I was just talking to Clay about that. I'm praying that God will help me to please only speak the words that someone needs to hear to give him honor and him glory. I've written something out. I'm going to stick to it because otherwise I'll be here a whole lot longer. So our God is an awesome God. He alone is worthy to be praised. It is very important for me to publicly declare what he is currently doing in our family. Some of you know our youngest daughter, Haley. Actually, a lot of you probably don't know why. You're praying for Haley Baker. Why is that girl always on the prayer list? Well, let me tell you. She's been very, very sick since she was 14. She was an active, athletic, I'm not gonna cry. She was a gifted ballerina, encouraged by her dance teacher. She had plans to attend FSU on a dance scholarship. Even at 14, that was her plan. Then she started passing out in dance class. Her bones began to hurt so badly that she would ask me to squeeze her calves and her forearms just to get some relief. She started forgetting what her classes were in school. Odd symptoms continued to accumulate, eventually leading to diagnoses of depression, anxiety, and panic attacks. Eventually, after suffering back-to-back episodes of anaphylactic shock, if you don't know what that is, think of the worst allergic reaction you've ever heard of. Like think of people with peanut allergies. That is when your body just starts to shut down on itself. That's anaphylactic shock. So she started going to anaphylactic shock. She was diagnosed at age 15 with something very rare called mast cell activation syndrome. Mast cells are like little soldiers. They come to your rescue and fight off infections and allergic reactions. She doesn't have infections or allergic reactions. She's not allergic to a thing on the planet, but yet this happens to her. They release well over 200 known chemicals in order to fight whatever it is they're fighting. They're the good guys, but in Haley's case, they're confused, and unfortunately for her, they're the good guys gone bad. Since age 14, we've spent more time in the hospital than I can calculate. ER visits are very common for us, and most of the time, those visits lead to stays. She's been diagnosed, undiagnosed, re-diagnosed with MCAS, as well as other unusual disorders. Doctors have agreed and disagreed. She's been accused of making herself sick. I've been accused of making her sick. I don't blame anyone for wondering that. I myself found myself wondering if she was making herself sick. Nothing made sense. Many well-meaning people told her she was going to get well. Just have faith. Oh my goodness. I'll save the gory details of what we've gone through all these years. I'll cut it short by saying that I never, ever had an interest in learning anything about medicine, healthcare. Yet I found myself accessing my daughter's chest port weekly, feeding her formula and medication through a tube in her abdomen, and learning more about her condition than most doctors will ever need to know. Things happened that made her worse, the ugliest one of them being prednisone. She was prescribed it to prevent anaphylactic shock. It didn't stop the episodes, but it slowed them down enough to justify keeping her on it. Eventually, her adrenal glands fell asleep and she no longer produced her own cortisol, which your body requires in order to stay alive. She developed Cushing syndrome and gained nearly 150 pounds in a short amount of time. By age 20, her body was shutting itself down. Adrenal insufficiency was complicating matters. Every hospital stay looked like it could be the last. Fast forward to December of 21, and she spent Christmas and New Year's in the hospital with respiratory failure from COVID. She spent her 22nd birthday in a nursing home because she couldn't walk and I couldn't take care of her. Last spring, her doctor pulled me aside and his exact words were, You know your daughter could pass at any time. She's lucky to still be alive. Every month you get is a blessing. You see, the medical interventions that were intended to save her young life had now destroyed her body. The damage was irreversible. I nodded my head and said, God is in charge. He has the final say. So what did we do? Well, of course, we immediately began making plans for her to live. I encouraged her to audition to sing the national anthem at the Silver Spur Rodeo in Kissimmee, Florida last June. Her sister Michaela was the current Miss Rodeo Florida, and she carried the American flag in the arena while Haley sang. Haley's body was supposed to expire at any moment, so we pressed on. Next, I booked her flight and hotel for Vegas for the beginning of December so she could watch her sister compete for Miss Rodeo America. Crazy? Maybe. But I trusted God. He's bigger than this. He has the final say. The summer was rough. She was very ill. But on August 7th, I finally had the opportunity to do something I'd never done, sing a duet with my daughter. She and I sang Even If, right here. The words she sang out, I know the sorrow, and I know the hurt could all go away if you just say the word. But even if you don't, my hope is you alone. Did she mean those words? 10 days later, she was put to the test. On August 17th, she was admitted to Baylor Scott & White Hospital in McKinney with a mystery infection, very high lactic acid. Just so happened to have COVID again. Released after 6 days. And then on the last weekend of August, Jamie and I had a brief respite, took a weekend to celebrate our 30th wedding anniversary. I literally cried on the way home. I was exhausted, overwhelmed, and I had a deep sense of dread as we headed back home from the bed and breakfast. Daunted but not relenting, because our God is in charge, on September 9th, Haley and I flew to Orlando to help Michaela through the Miss Rodeo Florida pageant, where she would symbolically pass on her crown before finishing out her reign for the rest of the year. Haley was not able to make it to all of the events. She slept in Michaela's house most of the time. And then she and I flew back to Texas on the 13th of September. 2 days later, September 15th, she was admitted to Baylor Scott & White for another mystery infection, very high lactic acid. We stayed 4 days and then went home. Sorry for the sniffles, y'all. For 6 whole weeks, there were no hospital stays. Then came Halloween. On October 31st, she was admitted to ICU at Baylor Scott & White. This time the infection was in her blood. Sepsis, again. She had fought and won the battle with sepsis at age 17. Chances of beating it again, especially in her current condition, were very slim. Every medical professional gave me that look that said, this is probably not going to end well. Most of the time, we don't discover her sources of infection. A lot of times, there is no source of infection. It may just be a change of weather that causes her to have a flare. But this time, the source was tangibly obvious. It was her chest ward. It was very infected. It had to be removed immediately because her organs were shutting down. What were we going to do without a chest port? The child had no usable veins. They had to draw blood from her foot. After blowing over a dozen veins in just a few days, a new Metaport was placed on the opposite side of where the infected one had been removed. While in ICU, I kept reminding Haley that this was the first week in November, and she was flying to Vegas in less than a month. She had to get well. I would tell the doctors and nurses the same thing. I'm pretty sure they all thought I was nuts, but it's okay. My God is greater than any doubts or fears. I trusted him completely. Haley was going to make this trip. Within a week, the blood infection was gone. By God's amazing grace, Haley was still with us and we were heading home again. The day before Thanksgiving, Jamie and I drove to Vegas with Michaela with her wardrobe and a trailer behind us. And it was risky leaving Haley behind. I felt bad about it because she would have to be without us for Thanksgiving and make it to family Thanksgiving dinner without us, but I trusted that God was in charge. On December 1st, Haley and her sweet friend Laura flew to Vegas. Haley did not miss one single event while she was there. Laura pushed her wheelchair for what seemed like miles, and Haley got to watch her sister compete for Miss Rodeo America. What had seemed like total and complete insanity had become reality and increased all of our faith. Not only did she make it through the entire trip without an incident, the only setback Haley encountered was a cold. It's pretty mandatory that you return from Vegas with a cold, in case y'all haven't been there. But Why should she be any different? But the crazy part is this: Haley made it through that cold without it developing into anything other than a head cold. It's incomprehensible. For the first time since she was 14 years old, she made it through a common cold without developing into bronchitis or a major infection. She required no medical intervention aside from Mucinex and a home nebulizer. This is God's amazing grace. What happens next is even more incredible. Christmas came and went without incident. January 28th was her 23rd birthday. Remember, a year ago, and her birthday, she was in a nursing home. Her sister Michaela asked if she could fly to Florida for her birthday so she could take her to Universal Studios. Shocked, because the two of them are nearly 5 years apart and they're not very close relationally, I agreed. Haley went to Orlando by herself for what was a 5-day trip. Next thing we know, the two of them are asking if she could stay longer, and what started out as a short trip eventually morphed into a 15-day trip. Not only that, but while she was there, Michaela asked her if she would like to move to Orlando with her. To say I was shocked would be an understatement. You could have just knocked me over with a feather. Could this be possible? Is there any way it'll work? What about doctors? What about medicine? What about emergencies? But here's the thing. Michaela has developed a deep love and sincere concern for her sister. She enjoyed her visit with her. She believes she has a better chance at life if she's there with her. She will finally have the chance to live, surrounded by theme parks, shopping malls, living in Michaela's condo at a resort with pools and a game room and a gym and all of these things. No way to avoid socialization, which right now she's a shut-in. She lives as a shut-in. She does not have socialization. I think Michaela's onto something, y'all. I talked to Haley about it. She starts talking about living. After 9 years of this, she says she's going to live the life God has planned her to live. She's talking about dance. Remember, y'all, a year ago we're told she's on her way out. What Satan intends as harm, God intends for good. All things work together for the good of those who love the Lord, who are called according to his purpose. That little girl loves the Lord, and she is called according to his purpose. Can it all unravel tomorrow? You bet your boots it can. I'm not naive. But you know what? We don't fear the unknown. We fear our God, who is in control of the unknown. We fear the God who created the universe and everything in it, who also created her body and is more than able to undo any damage that has been done. We fear the God who allowed this mysterious illness to take her down, and even if it never goes away, our mighty God has everything he needs to build her back the way he intends her to be. Everything was easy for Haley before this disease. She had the Midas touch. She was good at everything she set her mind to. In fact, I prayed for God to please keep her humble. Don't allow her own success to go to her head. Don't let her grow up thinking she's better than others. God answered my prayers in a very real way that I would have never expected or accepted had I been given that choice. But I believe God honored this mother's prayers. I believe he continues to honor this mother's prayers. I pray continuously for him to draw both of my daughters close to him, no matter what it takes. That is a scary prayer to pray, that no matter what. But I keep praying it for both of them. In fact, Michaela left our house last night to drive back to Florida after a very brief visit. We finally got to have Christmas last night. Please pray for her as she's driving back to Florida. Anyways, to sum this up, y'all, if God is willing, on March 15th, Haley will fly to Orlando to live with her sister. Jamie and I thank y'all so much for your prayers, and we beg you to continue as Michaela helps Haley to begin to live again. Thank you.
Amen.